Any day, by the way, I want to just add one programming note before I begin. Any day that I get to have lunch with the busiest person in my household is a good day. And I'm grateful that Annie has joined us here today. I'm not afraid to admit that I'm married up. And there's a part of me that regrets depriving her patients, whose lives she strives to save every day, of even a little bit of her time. I can't thank her enough for all of her love and support of me and our 3 girls in our great city. Today, thanks to the hard work of the residents, employees, and supporters of New Bedford, there is much progress to report. We've seen a sharp drop in our unemployment rate over the past few years, new businesses springing up all over the city, and a record number of construction permits just last year. In the South End, 2 new schools and a $55 million expansion of the SMAS research facility are being built. In the North End, industrial growth has been so robust that former mills are filling up, and we now have the desirable problem that our business park, for the first time in its 60-year history, is almost full. On the waterfront, cargo tonnage is growing, new seafood processors are moving in, a new Nantucket ferry is about to be launched, and residents and visitors are flocking to restaurants along the water's edge. The downtown now has become the center of the region's entertainment and dining scene, and that's only going to grow once the new hotel on Union Street comes online. Test scores in our schools are rising faster than the state average. New Bedford High School is rebounding and is now one of the few schools in the state with the prestigious advanced placement capstone designation. That's a mouthful, but it's important. And here at Voc Tech, students are getting a first-rate technical education that will prepare them to be competitive in tomorrow's workforce. In our neighborhoods, violent crime is down some 14% year over year. And our neighborhood task force has not lifted its foot off the pedal in its pursuit of irresponsible landlords. Our fire department, through the leadership of Mike Gomes, the skill of our firefighters, and the investments the city has made in the department, is now one of only 3 communities, including Boston and Cambridge, that now have the insurance industry's ISO 1 designation. City services are as effective and as efficient as they have ever been in the city's history. And I'm not just talking about snow removal. Through the multi-year, you can clap at that, if you hadn't noticed. Through the multi-year effort of our department heads and our performance analyst, Christina Mills, we now have in place the ability to measure and more effectively manage the performance of government agencies. This is the city stat stuff that we've been talking about for years. And as a national leader in renewable energy, New Bedford just this year is saving over $1 million in energy costs. That's a big hit to the bottom line. There's no doubt about it, ladies and gentlemen. New Bedford has its act together. Now, I'm not suggesting by any of this that it's time for a victory lap. My point is that for a city that had been down for so long, these and other accomplishments are the evidence that our community is capable of steady, sustained progress. These are the kinds of wins that build the kind of community confidence that is necessary to achieve more. The question, of course, is, where do we go from here? Not just tomorrow, not just next year. What kind of city are we building for our children and grandchildren? What kind of city are we building that will throw the doors open to opportunity for them? What do we need to do to make them proud of their city? There's no one-size-fits-all approach to urban revitalization. Cities are complex and different, but successful cities have this one thing in common. They don't sit back and passively hope for good things to happen to them. They make things happen. They initiate the action. Others are not going to rain assistance down upon us, nor would that change matters. You could start running trains from here to Boston tomorrow when we'd still be facing the same set of challenges. The state could give us more aid and the federal government could expand grant programs, and we still would have to chart our own course. The state and federal governments are our partners. They are not saviors. We in New Bedford have to be responsible for our own future. So what will it take for New Bedford to thrive in the world, in a competitive world in the long run? I believe that there are three pillars on which our future success rests. The first is that we must continue to strengthen New Bedford's capacity to govern itself. That means that local government has to be able to anticipate, confront, and effectively solve the collective challenges the city faces at any given time. It is incumbent upon us to help future elected leaders do their job well. Making sure those leaders have the resources that to make government run is a big part of it. Cities and even countries sow the seeds of decline when they start making short-sighted budget decisions. Water problems in Flint, Michigan, just to take a current example, have their origins in part from a failure of municipal government to make prudent investments in its water system over many years. And there are plenty of other examples. We in New Bedford have been living through a period of tight finances in part because of poor decisions or neglect in the past. There are hundreds of millions of dollars in deferred maintenance, still more unfunded retiree liabilities, and not enough money for our schools and for basic services. Now, there's no cure for insomnia better than a discussion of municipal budgeting, and I'm going to spare you that. But it is enough to say that although money remains tight, we have been digging ourselves out. Sacrifices have been made along the way for sure. Certain city departments have been cut to the point where their ability to function has been compromised, and taxpayers have been imposed upon. Unfortunately, these sacrifices have been made and more need to be made because more modest sacrifices weren't made in the past. The good news is that under the skillful guidance of our CFO, Ari Skye, New Bedford's fiscal outlook is growing more stable. We have been able to build our fund balances, conduct effective capital planning for the first time in the city's history, and achieve major efficiencies across city agencies. There is good reason why we have secured the highest bond rating in the city's history, and why taxpayers should be confident that their funds are being carefully spent. The goal is to get the city on a steadier course still. Together we're making the right moves, but it takes time and may require even more sacrifices. But when it comes to finances, we are clearly on a more healthier and more sustainable path that will lead to a stronger city government and an easier burden on taxpayers in the long run. Strengthening New Bedford's ability to govern effectively also requires a government structure that is suited to the city's needs in the future. And there's a lot of tinkering that can be done to the structure of government, but the single biggest institutional impediment to effective governing in this city is the 2-year mayoral term. It places intense pressure on the occupant of the office of mayor to cut corners for political expediency, chills risk-taking, displaces long hours of governing with long hours of campaigning, and discourages talented people from running for the office. It is archaic, and it is a millstone on the city's progress, and it is about time that we do away with it. Now, none of this, I will hasten to add that none of this is meant to be self-serving. 2 years ago, I filed a petition with the City Council to change the term to 4 years with a provision that would exclude me from eligibility, take me out of it. I will be resubmitting that ordinance again, and I appreciate the openness to it expressed by City Council President Linda Morad and other councilors. When it comes to improving the city's long-term prospects, this one's a no-brainer, and we need to get it done. What is less straightforward, but what is just as important, is the need to get qualified people into government. Attracting talent is critical to any organization, as all of you business people know, and city government is no exception. As mayor, I have been blessed with a first-rate team, and it's been that way partly because we've committed from the start to hiring people based on the merits and not on political connections. Most folks in senior leadership positions in government, here and elsewhere, are willing to take less pay than they would in the private sector, to a point. Lately, we've had difficulty filling certain leadership positions because our salaries are well below the going rate for similar positions elsewhere. To attract and retain qualified managers and to have the effective government that our residents deserve, we need to offer fair and competitive salaries, and we can do it with a relatively minimal impact on our budget. At the same time, we need to acknowledge that during this current period of fiscal austerity, the lowest paid employees in city government have not seen their wages increase in real terms. We must see to it that they get a fair shake. We must commit now, as the city gets on firmer financial footing, to a long-term goal of paying a living wage to the employees at the bottom of the pay scale. The second pillar of success in the long run is our making the most of the city's assets. Fortunately, New Bedford has more cards to play than most. As you've heard me emphasize so many times before, the highest card in our deck is our waterfront. Here's one explanation of why our coastline is so important. On a sunny day last fall, I was walking along the Harbor Walk, the newly completed Harbor Walk, with one of my daughters when I was approached by a retired city employee who came up to me and said, "Mayor, I really love this Harbor Walk. I am so glad that the city has this." And so I said, "Well, what do you like most about it?" And he said, "Well, I don't live too far away from here, just walking distance." And then pointing to the ocean, he said, "And just because it's so beautiful, just because it's so beautiful." That, in a nutshell, is why it matters. The people of New Bedford deserve to have something as beautiful as that, as much as any city in America, no matter how wealthy. Great neighborhoods have great public spaces, and the most attractive public places are those near the water. That's why we built the Harbor Walk, and that's why we're not stopping there. Through the determination of DPI Commissioner Ron LaBelle and his team, I am pleased to report that we have designed and secured the permitting for the Cove Walk on the Clark's Cove side of the hurricane barrier. It is shovel-ready, and we are relentlessly pursuing funding for it from the state. And I want, in this regard, to thank Senator Montigny and Representative Cabral for their supportive phone calls, as well as the open ear of State Transportation Secretary Stephanie Pollock about our funding pitch. At the same time, we are moving ahead with the Riverwalk along the Acushnet River in the north end. Although this will take time because it is proceeding side by side with the EPA cleanup in the Upper Harbor, and we completed the design with ample community input, and it looks fantastic. And the project is moving ahead steadily thanks in part to the hard work of our environmental steward, Michelle Paul, and the cooperative approach of the Environmental Protection Agency. Our goal in all of this is a very ambitious one, but a very doable one. And that's to ring the city with a system of waterside trails that will enrich the quality of life of our neighborhoods from north end to south end, raise property values, and draw visitors into the city. New Bedford will be known as a place that has unique and extensive waterfront amenities. To quote a certain presidential candidate, it's going to be huge. The single biggest economic asset in Greater New Bedford, of course, is the port, which is poised for more growth. If you got this morning's paper, you read about the waterfront planning study that we've been working on for over the last year and a half with a broad array of waterfront stakeholders. The planning effort brings into sharper focus our all of the above strategy for the port, whose emphasis is on diversifying the industries that call our port home, supporting the continued success and evolution of the fishing industry, and promoting development that will knit our central waterfront into our downtown for the first time in a half century. I want to thank Ed Washburn, our port director, the Harbor Development Commission, and the local steering committee of more than 36 waterfront stakeholders who shaped this plan. It is a clear roadmap for the future of our port and will ultimately lead to more job opportunities and a more vibrant port. In addition to the port, New Bedford has numerous assets, too many to list here. But there is one set of assets that is right in front of us that still hasn't been leveraged nearly as much as it should, even though it's talked about a lot. And I'm talking about the city's cultural and artistic assets. There are the big ones, of course, the Whaling Museum, the Z, the Art Museum, the CVPA, the National Park and the Zoo, and others, each of which is fabulous and having a really good year. But there's more. There are places like the RJD, the Fort Rodman, Sergeant Carney's house. And there are the events, like the Feast, the Cape Verdean Recognition Parade, and the Fisherman's Memorial Service. And then, of course, there's the growing arts community that gets more and more national attention all the time. And when you get right down to it, there's our story, our very rich story, as the center of the whaling, cotton textile, and fishing industries and successive chapters in a city that is as diverse culturally as any in America. We need to accentuate all of this. Reestablishing the Office of Marketing and Tourism 3 years ago was a significant first step. And New Bedford has no more passionate champion than our tourism director, Dagny Ashley, whose work has driven our growing tourism numbers. It's time, in my view, to take it a step further. In the coming weeks, I will present a proposal to create a dedicated fund for the promotion of the cultural and artistic assets of the city that will be funded by the receipts of the city's hotel tax. With a new hotel in the pipeline, we will amplify our promotion efforts. We need for the world to hear our rich story, and we need to be known as a creative place. The third pillar of our long-term viability is what I would call building gravity. To succeed, New Bedford must be a place where people who have choices would want to live and stay in. Young and old across America are moving back into cities for lots of reasons, not the least of which is the desire to be in the center of things. We need to start reinforcing that New Bedford is in the center of things in southeastern Massachusetts. New Bedford is not just another community along a coastline, nor are we part of a larger metropolitan area. New Bedford, after all, is farther from Boston than the capitals of the next two states. We have to hold ourselves out as the hub of the region, which is what we are. So what does it take to get people to be drawn here? We've talked about some of them. The economic assets like the port that would cause business clusters like those in fishing and offshore wind to grow here, and we need to cultivate both of those. It's our pursuit of anchor institutions as well that are a good fit, that would be a good fit here, like the NOAA Science Center. It's the amenities like our parks and, yes, the Harbor Walk, of course. And it's all the cultural amenities that we talked about that make us unique and interesting, and then there's so much more. There are two other prerequisites that need particular attention. To retain folks here, our neighborhoods must be safe and our schools must perform well. When it comes to public safety, we've made substantial progress. A 14% drop in violent crime in 1 year is significant, and the hardworking men and women of our police department deserve tremendous credit for that. While most of our neighborhoods are safe, certain ones are not safe enough. And that should bother all of us. It certainly bothers me. And what we need right now are not the gimmicks and sound bites that too often pass for public safety initiatives in other cities. Rather, we need substantial and substantive measures that will yield sustainable improvements in the public safety of our neighborhoods. And the next month, we will hire a new police chief to fill the shoes of the late David Preventure, who established a foundation of professionalism in the department that we can build on. The most important thing that we can do to keep our communities safe is to install and support an effective leader in our police department, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. But this is a moment also to do more. Ours is a high-performing police department that is respected far beyond New Bedford. But as with every component of city government, we need to look for ways to improve. Among my expectations for the next chief is that he will undertake a strategic plan for the department so that we can answer the basic questions about how the police department responds to a changing community. Such planning efforts commonly take place after a crisis or controversy, including the last one done in New Bedford some 20 years ago. But there's no reason that we should wait for a crisis to plan one. We are going to use this moment to make an effective police department even better. In a city of roughly 100,000, it takes but a handful of dangerous criminals to make the community much safe. Our strategy in recent years has been to identify and focus on our attention on recidivists. and it has worked for the most part. The problem we have faced is that far too many judges, especially in state district court, are unwilling to lock up the most dangerous offenders in our community despite ample evidence of the dangers they pose to the community. This is a problem I have discussed extensively with our district attorney, Tom Quinn, an experienced career prosecutor, if there ever was one, who sees it the same way I do. We believe that the solution is to concentrate time and resources, not just at the police level, but also at the prosecutorial level, to develop more serious cases against the most dangerous offenders so that they end up in superior court where the likelihood of jail time is much higher. Toward this end, the district attorney has formed a unit of experienced prosecutors in his office that will focus exclusively on New Bedford cases. That way, his office can give the impact players the extra attention necessary to get them into superior court. I can't thank Tom enough for his professionalism and his collaborative effort with me on this, and frankly, he should be the one making the announcement, not me. So let's give him a round of applause right now. Getting dangerous people off the streets is part of the equation to make our neighborhoods safer. But we also have to get at the roots of crime, the basic causes of why people engage in dangerous behavior. And we've made a lot of progress in the last few years on the so-called broken window causes of crime, such as graffiti and trash, and we certainly won't let up on that. But the most persistent driver of crime in this city and others across the Northeast is opiate dependency. The news continues to pour in that the entire state is facing a public health and safety problem like none before. Just yesterday, we learned that the state's hospitals saw a 200% increase in heroin-related admissions from 2007 to 2014. Together with our partners at South Coast Healthcare and others, we will continue to invest in the task force our health director, Brenda Weiss, is ably leading to get addicts into the treatment that they need. And we will strive to get their lives back on track before they have to resort to criminal conduct. But safety alone is not enough to make a city attractive. It must offer pathways to opportunity, and more than anything else, that means that the city has to be a place where a child can get a really good education. In this area, of course, we have been doing some heavy lifting. 4 years ago, we were on the brink of state takeover, and since then, the school department has laid a foundation for true reform and renewal. And objective measures of improvements have been appearing on the scoreboard already. The dropout rate, for instance, has fallen to the lowest point in 15 years. This is something that was a persistent challenge for many, many years in the city, and we've moved the needle on it. Student test scores grew faster than the state average, which is a remarkable feat given the demographics of our city. The superintendent, her team, teachers, and the school committee deserve tremendous credit for getting all of this done. But there's still much work to do. As the district moves forward, it can't lose sight of the building blocks of reform. Successful school systems have a culture of respect and high standards of personal conduct where student safety is not even an issue. A positive school climate is a fundamental prerequisite to educational attainment. We all know that. All the other improvements that are underway in the school system, more rigorous instruction, expanded learning time, new technological tools, and so forth, lots of steps that have been put in place, won't be effective if classrooms are not orderly and focused on learning. The news of disruptive student behavior, or worse, at Keith Middle School is very troubling. The problem is real, and it reflects poorly not just on Keith, but the entire school district. But more importantly, discipline problems should be in the rearview mirror by now, at this point in the reform effort. When it comes to discipline, the school administration and none of us in the community must keep our eye on the ball. This is a solvable problem. And I say to parents out there that the school committee expects it to be fixed. Your children will get the education they deserve and the environment they deserve. strengthening the city's capacity to govern itself, making the most of our assets, and building gravity. These are the three pillars on which New Bedford will thrive in the long run. And that's what it'll take to build the vibrant community that we all seek. There's one part I left out of the discussion of governing capacity, though. It was what John Adams referred to as skillful and upright government. And it's what today most people would call effective leadership. The quality of people we elect to office matters an awful lot. And we are graced today by the members of the Mayor's Youth Council, who are high school students that provide me with input on issues that affect youth in our city. They are high achievers, all of them. The seniors right now among them are waiting to hear back from some of the best colleges in America. And whether you know it or not, they are sprinkled across the audience right now. And their attendance was made possible by Councilors Morad and Ribeiro and the whole City Council, who had the really thoughtful idea of inviting them here today to get a glimpse of government in action. So I am going to address my closing remarks directly to them. And the remaining 500 or so of you in the audience are welcome to listen in. Today, I am concerned about the introduction to politics that younger Americans like you are being treated to these days. Images of a presidential debate descending into schoolyard name calling before a worldwide audience doesn't exactly inspire your generation to participate in the electoral process. Neither does the hysteria and false information routinely propagated in social media. It makes it all too easy to check out. But it doesn't have to be this way. Politics is not a base profession. It is as noble as its participants choose to make it. Government is about doing for people that which they cannot do on their own. If you believe, as I do, that the interest of your country, your community, your family, and your friends are worthy of your full devotion, public service can be a source of personal fulfillment for you. Our future depends on the willingness of talented, honest, and hardworking people like you to run for office or serve in government. We as a community need to work together to build a political culture of civility and high standards that will draw you, the next generation, to this important work. As a community, let us be a shining example to the rest of the country of renewal, rebirth, and responsible government. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless our great city.